Let's begin our exciting journey into the world of human relationships.
My name is Olivia, and I'm super excited to share my story of infidelity with you. So get ready to hear all about my complicated love life, which can sometimes be a bit crazy. First, let me introduce myself. I'm 22 years old, with messy brown hair and a laugh that they say is contagious. Almost 3 years ago, I found love in the arms of my boyfriend Tomas. Those brown eyes of his and his unconditional affection captivated me from the start. We were a stable couple, or so I thought, until something started to weigh on my mind and heart. You see, since I was a teenager, I've always been attracted to older men. I'm not exactly sure why, but something about their maturity and experience made me feel emotions I couldn't explain. Whenever I saw couples with a significant age difference, my heart would race, and a little voice in my head would wonder what it would be like to be with someone like that. At first, I just considered it a passing fantasy, but over time, that idea became somewhat of an obsession. The internet didn't help much with all those movies and series portraying romances between young women and older men. It's not that I wanted to betray Tomas or hurt him, but that fantasy took hold of me like an emotional virus that I couldn't shake from my head. I remember vividly one day when Tomas and I were in a park. Everything was perfect, the sun was shining, laughter filled the air, and we were just enjoying each other's company. But then I saw him, an older, attractive, and elegant man sitting on a nearby bench. Our eyes met for a moment, and my heart raced as if I had run a marathon. I tried to ignore those conflicting feelings, but my mind was filled with unanswered questions. What would have happened if I had met that man before being with Tomas? What would it be like to be with someone older and more experienced? I felt trapped between my love for Tomas and my forbidden desire. Dealing with these emotions wasn't easy. Every time Tomas hugged me or said nice words to me, I was filled with guilt for thinking about someone else. I tried to push those thoughts out of my mind, but it seemed impossible. Was I a bad person for having these fantasies? I felt lost and confused. One day, while searching for answers on the internet, I came across an article talking about sexual fantasies and how they are completely normal. I felt relieved to know that I wasn't alone in this and that I wasn't the only one with secret and somewhat unusual desires. Although the article helped me understand a little more, my emotions were still torn between what I felt for Tomas and my curiosity to live out that fantasy with an older man. I felt divided, as if I were walking on a very narrow bridge, trying not to fall into the abyss. Talking about this with my close friends wasn't an option. How could I tell them that, although I love my boyfriend, I also fantasize about another man? I was afraid of being judged, of them thinking I didn't deserve Tomas. So I kept silent and immersed myself further in my conflicting thoughts and emotions, and thus my forbidden fantasy continued to grow in my mind, fueled by curiosity and intrigue. What should I do? Hide my feelings and live with this fantasy as a dark secret, or face reality and discover if there is something beyond this forbidden attraction? It all started on a Friday night when my friends and I decided to go out and have some fun. The music was blasting, the lights were shining, and the atmosphere was great. It was one of those nights when you feel free and carefree, ready to enjoy life. In the midst of the crowd, my gaze met that of an older, attractive man who was alone at the bar. His gray hair gave him an interesting look, and his eyes sparkled with a mix of wisdom and mystery. Although he had a friendly smile, I could sense a certain sadness in his eyes that intrigued me immediately. My friends noticed my change in expression and asked me what was going on. Nothing, I just saw that man over there, I replied, trying to stay calm and hide what I was feeling, but inside my heart was racing, and my mind was filled with confusing thoughts. I decided to approach the bar with a little fear, but also with overwhelming curiosity. What was I doing? Why was I so attracted to him? It wasn't just his physical appearance, but something in his gaze and the way he moved that intrigued me greatly. I introduced myself, and he responded with a warm and charming smile. "I'm Roberto," he said, and his voice was as soft as a melody. "Hi, I'm Olivia," I said timidly, feeling my cheeks blush slightly. We started talking, and to my surprise, we had a lot in common. We talked about our relationships, work, and hobbies. With every word that came out of his mouth, I felt more drawn to him, as if there was a special connection between us. As we danced, our hands accidentally brushed against each other, and I felt an electric current running through my body. My God, what was happening? I felt guilty for enjoying the company of someone who wasn't my boyfriend so much, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the intensity of the desire I felt towards Roberto. The night progressed, and we found ourselves in a quieter corner of the place where we could talk without the music drowning us out. It was then that Roberto shared part of his story with me. He had gone through difficult times in his life, which explained the sadness in his eyes. His vulnerability moved me, and I felt the urge to want to take care of him and make him feel better. But at the same time, I felt guilty for having such intense thoughts towards someone who wasn't Tomas, my boyfriend, who had always been so affectionate and understanding with me. The internal struggle was exhausting. On the one hand, I had Tomas, my stable and secure relationship, but on the other hand, there was Roberto, an older man who aroused emotions in me that I had never experienced before. How could I feel this way about two people at once? At the end of the night, Roberto walked me home, and before saying goodbye, he took my hand and looked at me intently. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. "It's been an amazing night, Olivia," he said sincerely. "I hope to see you again." After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Roberto. His presence filled my thoughts all the time, and my mind was filled with memories of our conversations and shared laughter. My heart was torn between two men, each with a special place in my life, and so I found myself in an emotional dilemma, not knowing which path to take. Should I continue seeing Roberto, letting this forbidden attraction grow even stronger, or should I end this fantasy and focus on my relationship with Tomas? After that night at the bar, my mind and heart were in chaos. On the one hand, there was Tomas, my boyfriend, who had no idea what had happened and continued to give me all his love and affection. On the other hand, there was Roberto, an older and mysterious man who had awakened in me a forbidden and overwhelming passion. I was at an emotional crossroads, but curiosity and desire drove me to make a decision. So, with trembling hands, I dared to ask Roberto for his WhatsApp. I thought he probably wouldn't even respond, or maybe he would take it as a desperate gesture. But to my surprise, he accepted eagerly, and there I was, holding my phone, ready to send a message to Roberto. "Come on, Olivia, you can do this," I told myself, trying to gather the courage needed to take this exciting yet terrifying step. Finally, I wrote a simple, "Hi, how are you?" and sent it with a slight touch of anxiety. What would he say? Would he respond soon or just ignore my message? As I waited for his response, my heart was racing, as if I were running a race. To my surprise, Roberto replied almost immediately. His message was full of courtesy and good manners, which made my nervousness dissipate a little. We started chatting, and our conversations became increasingly interesting and profound. We talked about our goals, our life experiences, and our hopes for the future. I discovered that there was more to him than what I saw that night at the bar. He was a man with depth and emotional connections. Wise and thoughtful, with a sensitivity that captivated me. Over time, our conversations became flirtatious and playful. We told jokes, shared memes, and even sent each other photos of our favorite places. It was as if we had created our little secret world, oblivious to the reality waiting for me outside. And as I delved deeper into my clandestine affair with Roberto, guilt began to weigh on my heart. I knew I was betraying Tomas's trust, and that made me feel terribly bad. I wondered what would happen if he found out about this. Despite the guilt, the forbidden fantasy was stronger than ever. Every message from Roberto was like a drug that made me want more. I felt trapped between the love I felt for Tomas and the burning desire to live out this passion with Roberto. My days were filled with secrets and lies, and that made me question my own integrity. Who was I really? A girl who loved her boyfriend and wanted a stable relationship, or an adventurer who let herself be carried away by the excitement of the moment? And so I found myself trapped between two worlds, the world of my stable relationship with Tomas, which provided me with security and affection, and the world of my fantasy with Roberto, which filled me with excitement and adrenaline. It was becoming increasingly difficult to keep both worlds separate, and without realizing it, I was drifting away from reality. Of course, my heart knew that this couldn't continue indefinitely. Sooner or later, I would have to face the consequences, but the forbidden attraction was so powerful that I felt the opportunity to make it a reality was closer than ever. Fear and guilt were still present, but I also felt a kind of excitement at the idea of exploring the unknown. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help feeling that this adventure could be the most exciting and passionate chapter of my life, and so, with a divided heart and a mind in constant turmoil of emotions, I delved even deeper into my secret encounter with Roberto. After weeks of increasingly close and flirtatious conversations, my relationship with Roberto was growing stronger. Our messages were filled with desire and mischief, and the photos we shared began to become more intimate. Yes, I know, this isn't right at all, but desire was leading me down dangerous paths. Every time I received a message from Roberto, my heart raced. It seemed like we were in some kind of exciting and forbidden game. My friends warned me that it was dangerous, that I should be cautious, and that I could hurt the person I love, but passion and adrenaline were so addictive that I couldn't stop. One night, as I looked at my phone, a bold idea seized my mind. The attraction to Roberto was so intense that I couldn't resist the idea of being with him in person, of living out that forbidden fantasy that had tormented me for so long. I decided it was time to take a step further, to take this adventure to another level. But how? How could I propose to Roberto the idea of a more intimate encounter without scaring him off or pushing him away? It took me days to make that decision. Finally, I gathered the courage needed and decided to subtly suggest the idea to him. I sent him a message saying that I had something important I wanted to talk to him about, something that had been on my mind for a while. I knew it was a conversation we needed to have, but even so, I was afraid of how he would react. His response was immediate, and I could feel the intrigue in his words. We agreed to meet at a nearby cafe to talk in person, and so we found ourselves in that place on a sunny afternoon that contrasted with my head full of emotions. I felt nervous and anxious. I took a deep breath and explained to Roberto that our relationship was something special, and that although I wasn't looking for a serious relationship, I was attracted to him in a way that I couldn't ignore. I confessed that my secret fantasy of being with an older man had grown so much that I couldn't control it. I can't describe the mix of emotions on his face as he listened to me. He seemed surprised, but also cautious. He thanked me for being honest and told me that he also felt something special between us, but that we had to consider the consequences. We talked about the possible implications of moving forward with this fantasy and how it would affect our lives and the lives of the people we love. It was clear that we both knew we were playing with fire and that we could get hurt. Although at that moment we didn't reach a final decision, we both knew that the spark between us wouldn't easily extinguish. We said goodbye with a hug that left a bittersweet taste, knowing that our story was far from over. Back home, my mind was filled with doubts and questions. Had I done the right thing by suggesting the idea to Roberto? Would I be able to resist temptation and make responsible decisions? I felt confused, but at the same time excited about what the future might hold. The truth is, this forbidden fantasy was taking me to unknown and dangerous places. I didn't know if I could handle the intensity of what I was experiencing. After talking to Roberto about my fantasy, the tension had grown. Every message we exchanged was filled with desire and mischief, and the desire to be together became more irresistible. I felt like I was in some kind of emotional trance, torn between my love for Tomas and my forbidden passion for Roberto. I knew I was playing with fire, but adrenaline and excitement were leading me down dangerous paths. One afternoon, as we chatted by messages, the idea of being together in a more intimate setting naturally arose. The sexual tension between us was at its peak, and we both knew what we wanted. It was as if the universe was guiding us towards that moment. Finally, I decided to suggest to Roberto that we go to a hotel together. Although my heart was racing as I wrote that message, I knew I was determined to fulfill my fantasy of being with an older man. I couldn't resist the temptation to explore this forbidden passion that had tormented me for so long. I sent him the message and anxiously waited for his response. Every second felt like an eternity, but finally, his response came. Yes, Olivia, I also want to be with you, he wrote. Adrenaline rushed through my body, and I knew this was the beginning of an adventure that could change my life forever. The days leading up to the encounter were filled with emotions. I felt excited but also guilty. I knew what I was doing was wrong, that I could hurt Thomas and destroy our relationship. But desire was stronger than any logic or reason. My friends warned me again and again about the consequences of my actions, but I continued on as if guided by an irresistible force. I couldn't help but think about what it would be like to be with Roberto, to experience that forbidden passion that had obsessed me for so long. The day of the encounter arrived, and my heart was about to burst out of my chest. What was I doing? Was I ready to face the consequences of my decisions? Excitement and fear mixed inside me, creating an emotional storm that left me breathless. The day finally arrived. We met at that intimate hotel we had chosen, and emotions were running high. My heart was pounding, as if it wanted to escape from my chest, and my hands trembled with excitement and adrenaline coursing through my body. Being in front of Roberto, the older man who had aroused such intense passion in me, was a surreal experience. I felt like we were connected in a unique and special way, and the chemistry between us was undeniable. Without many words, we looked into each other's eyes, and I knew there was no turning back. We were going to do what we wanted to do, forbidden fantasy that had tormented me for so long. The desire was palpable, and neither of us could resist the temptation to explore the unknown. With trembling hands and racing hearts, we made our way to the hotel room. With each step we took, the excitement grew, and I knew I was about to experience one of the hottest experiences of my life. Once inside, the atmosphere was filled with tension and desire. We looked into each other's eyes and drew closer slowly. Our lips met in a passionate kiss that unleashed a whirlwind of emotions inside me. It was as if time stood still, and there were only two of us in that moment. Every caress, every touch of skin, was an explosion of sensations that took me to the limit of pleasure. Roberto knew my body as if he had studied it for years, and his expert hands roamed every inch of my skin with a delicacy that left me breathless. The passion was so intense that I felt like I was in an erotic dream. His lips explored my neck while his hands got lost in my hair. My whispers of pleasure mixed with his, creating a symphony of desire and lust. We let ourselves be carried away by unbridled passion, not thinking of anything else, but the pleasure we were giving each other. Every moment with Roberto was like an electric shock that ran through me from head to toe. My God, it was incredible. Time flew by, and I didn't want that moment to ever end. But like all good things, it also came to an end. We stayed embraced, exhausted and satisfied, enjoying each other's closeness and warmth. After that fiery encounter, I felt super excited to have fulfilled that fantasy I had always had, and I couldn't deny it. It was great. Now, I had to hide all evidence or suspicion of my encounter with Roberto. I had to pretend in front of my boyfriend as if nothing had happened. The experience had been one of the hottest and most exciting of my life. I couldn't deny that I had enjoyed every second with Roberto and that I had immersed myself in a passion that I had never experienced before. I found myself trapped between conflicting feelings, not knowing which path to take. On one hand, I wanted to continue exploring this forbidden passion with Roberto. But on the other hand, I knew that if Tomas found out, everything would end. After that hot encounter with Roberto at the hotel, I was trapped in that world of emotions and desires. I couldn't deny that I had enjoyed every moment with him, and the passion between us continued to grow with each encounter. Being together was like a magnetic connection that attracted us uncontrollably. Although my relationship with Thomas seemed fine on the surface, I knew I was living a double life in secret. I kept seeing Roberto, exploring a level of passion that I had never imagined. Each encounter was an intense and exciting experience that left me breathless. What I had with Roberto was different from anything I had experienced before. His experience and maturity led me to discover sensations and pleasures that I had never experienced. Every moment with him was a roller coaster of emotions, full of desires and whispers of pleasure. However, while I enjoyed that connection with Roberto, I also felt a knot in my stomach. Guilt crept in at unexpected moments, but I tried to ignore it to move forward. I repeated to myself that this was just an adventure that didn't have to affect my relationship with Thomas. But even though my heart was divided, my boyfriend suspected nothing. It seemed like I was doing a good job of hiding this other part of my life. Deep down, I knew this wasn't right, but I let myself be carried away by the passion and excitement of the moment. Every encounter with Roberto made me feel alive and desired. His presence filled me with intense emotions and made me momentarily forget my worries. But of course, I was also aware of the consequences of my actions and what I was risking. The fear of being discovered and the dread of hurting Thomas mixed with the desire and passion I felt for Roberto. I didn't know how to handle all these emotions and complicated decisions. Meanwhile, I continued to meet Roberto secretly, seeking moments of intimacy and passion. Each encounter was a sort of escape from reality, a way to release all my repressed emotions. My mind was filled with unanswered questions, and sometimes I felt lost in this dilemma. I knew I had to make a decision, but it was difficult to know what was right. Should I continue with this affair and risk everything, or should I end it to protect Thomas and our relationship? In those moments, I remembered the good times I had shared with Thomas and how much he loved me. It hurt to think of the possibility of losing him, but I also felt irresistibly drawn to Roberto. Life went on, and I found myself caught in the middle of a dilemma that I didn't know how to resolve. I kept seeing Roberto in secret, trying to maintain a balance. The sex and desire for him were hard to ignore, so occasionally we continued to meet, but only for intimate encounters. Those moments with Roberto filled me with excitement and passion, but they also left me with conflicting feelings. I knew I was risking a lot by continuing with this secret relationship, but the temptation was strong, and sometimes it was difficult to resist. My relationship with Thomas seemed fine on the surface. He had no idea what was happening, and that brought me some relief. I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. I can't deny that I love Thomas and value our relationship, but this experience with Roberto has made me question many things. I've realized that there are desires and emotions in me that I can't ignore, but I also can't deny the commitment I have to Thomas. I'm caught between two worlds, without knowing which path to take. On one hand, desire and passion pull me towards Roberto. On the other, my relationship and the love I have with Thomas. I don't know what decision to make, but I'll keep you updated on what happens.
As we conclude our journey into the world of human relationships, please remember to subscribe, like, and share our content. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next story.